It's theCUBE, covering HPE Big Data Conference 2016. Now, here are your hosts, Dave Vellante and Paul Gillen.
Back to Boston, everybody. Mutisya Ndunda is here. He's the founder and CEO, and he's joined by Michael Bishop, who's the CTO of LogitBot. We're going to talk about seeking alpha. Gentlemen, welcome to theCUBE. So tell us about LogitBot. Why did you found the company? What's it all about?
So the short story behind it is that I've sort of been in financial services for a really long time. Did my tour of duty across Wall Street, and almost 10 years ago now, ended up at a very large market-making firm in the Philadelphia area and was the chief of staff of their proprietary trading business. What that business was going through at the time was this evolution where people are embracing high-frequency trading technology, sort of replacing human traders with automated software. My company at the time was very resistant to that change and sort of valued the insight that a market maker human could provide during times of volatility. A lot of our competitors sort of threw away a lot of their traders, and when the 2008 sort of crisis hit, we were one of the few people willing to be buyers and sellers of last resort in the financial markets. And it was the best year the firm ever had during that period of turmoil. And the reason was human beings could make rational decisions. If somebody came and tried to sell you a blue chip stock at 80% off of its value, someone could sit there and say, I don't think this makes sense, I'm a willing buyer. So that sort of allowed us to basically have a trader not worry about the weeds and focus on the big risky trades, and have a machine interact with kind of the low order flow, kind of day-to-day order flow. And that is what sort of got me into the space. I left the firm and I joined Bloomberg, and I was the head of strategy and business development for 5 years. And the company is amazing, and they've built a business around providing people information. What's happened in the information business is that people have gone away from static data to analytical data. And so now what we're doing at LogitBot is combining the ability of machines to sort of take the grunt work out of your day-to-day job and allow you to focus on high-level things, and then also provide you with very useful insights using the power of modern computing technology. So we're combining a helper with intuition and an ability to deliver analytical capabilities.
So the money business and the tech business have collided.
Yes.
In a big way.
Yes.
And you're taking advantage of that by providing a platform for insight?
Yes.
Is that right? And
yes.
Okay, and are you an alpha geek, or are you not an alpha geek? Or
I guess I am.
And I say that with all respect.
Yeah. I think I am.
I wish I were an alpha geek.
I have a very sort of scientific background. I was an electrical engineer, did a master's in financial engineering. So I approach financial markets with sort of that systematic or analytical perspective. And I think in today's world, it's sort of the one place you can go to in periods where we're in an environment where people have never seen this before. Interest rates are negative around the world. Like, there's no precedent to a lot of things that are going on. So you can actually apply science to try and understand how markets will evolve given all that's going on using a process.
And you, Michael, are a platform builder, I presume, and a technologist, and you create products, is that right? Or as well as potentially an alpha geek?
Yes, and yeah.
Okay, so tell us about your platform.
Yeah, so
that you built.
Yeah, so our platform ingests an enormous amount of data that it has to reason about, and distill that down into insights and predictions for our end users, and that Spark and using BigQuery, Google, and TensorFlow, and HPE, Haven on Demand, to do some entity extraction on the news that we process. So lots and lots of volume, lots and lots of data going through. It goes through the meat grinder.
Do you, so okay, so you, and there's a
Sounds
lot
like
of secrets.
everything you do is a trade secret.
Yeah, there's a lot of secret sauce in there.
I think at a high level, just sort of the way I would explain it is that a lot of information is generally publicly available. You know, large companies are forced to disclose material information. They file regularly with the SEC. And if there's anything material, they actually have to have a press release. You know, so information is generally available, but it's in a format that a lot of people can't make use of given the volume of information. So if we can apply kind of artificial intelligence technologies to extract information, summarize it, find value that is hidden in text, you know, things of that nature, we can kind of give our clients an informational advantage. Again, in the financial services world, that is all we trade. The currency in the business is information. So allowing people to access information easier, faster, better, have a much more clear picture of what's going on in broad markets is obviously extremely useful to
So it's hidden information that you
It's there,
surface.
but it's just not apparent to people.
Is it text mining that you excel at, or?
Yeah, that is actually a good core strength of ours. Another one is this notion or technology that we use, which is a connected graph of the world's financial companies, or actually the world's publicly traded companies, and all the important people that are associated with those companies. So, as an example, and again, you could have a technology company that has a supplier in Taiwan that is delivering a component that goes into a phone, as an example. And if that supply in Taiwan starts indicating to its Taiwanese investment community or the regulators there that it has an inventory buildup, right? You could have a piece of technology that could read that and make an inference about this US-based customer of theirs. Right? So in the case of a phone, they could say, oh, the sales of these phones might be weak because we were expecting the Taiwanese supplier to be selling the components like hotcakes, and it's not the case.
So in a previous life, I did that for the disk drive industry. I mean, I had the whole supply chain figured out, and it took me years and years and years to build.
Yes.
And it took me a lot of phone calls, a lot of dinners, a lot of drunk nights going out and getting information. And I wasn't so drunk, it turns out, but they were. But it would have been impossible to scale.
Yes.
Right. So you figured out a way to automate.
Yes, because you can obviously use the power of even technologies like Haven that do text extraction, entity recognition from raw text. So you could have a computer read text and then extract this entity is an entity and it has these products, and these products are supplied by these other entities, and kind of build that graph without having a human being having to collect the information manually.
You have a potentially infinite amount of data.
Yes,
that could be relevant to what you do.
Yes.
So how do you apply big data principles to actually narrow that down and find the data that matters?
There's a lot of filtering. As you might imagine, there's a lot of junk in what you bring in. So there's an enormous amount of effort that goes into filtering out things. So for instance, with news, we're ingesting, I think, 70,000 news sources, which have been curated and ranked by hand for importance and reliability, and that's constantly updated and checked. And there are automated ways in which we filter things out and throw things out.
Yeah. The other thing I'll just add is that the other way we do it is we just try a lot of things. Because again, with a computer, you can almost run 50,000 things and see what actually is meaningful. So that is also another really easy way of solving a problem, is you have an ability not to just try one thing. You could simultaneously try 50, 100,000 things, and then understand what's really going on based on those 100,000 experiments that you just did.
And in the Haven portfolio, you use a little bit of Hadoop, a lot of autonomy, a little bit of Vertica.
We are big users of their APIs. So what they have there is almost like little building blocks for machine learning and nifty things with text extraction. So we like that because you can actually design your own, software ingestion platform.
It allows us building
interface.
blocks that we can quickly run experiments on in the new combinations product that they've announced. We had a preview, we were able to work with a preview of that, and we think that's going to be even more of a force multiplier for us, and it lessens the value, lessens the cost in time for us to run experiments, and it also pushes the complexity, or eliminates a lot of the complexity of running them down, so that we're able to push this down to a data scientist or someone who wants to run a machine learning experiment, and they can do that with little to no coding involved. So that's a dramatic improvement over having to spend a few weeks coding something up.
We've got this massive API economy that's developed, and I would think that a company like yours would thrive off of that. I mean, do you plug into a lot of APIs to assemble the data that you process?
Absolutely, and we also are providing APIs of our own. So yes, just to answer your question, we definitely believe in the API world. We are able to leverage technologies that would have taken a firm like ours maybe decades to develop or even scale.
Yes.
So through the power of APIs, we're able to kind of quickly turn things on and make the calls or retrieve the information we want very seamlessly.
We're at a time where through API delivery, it's kind of democratized a lot of these very expensive to purchase on-premise technologies, things that were just out of reach for a small company, even just a few years ago.
So, can you give an example? I mean, what kind of data are you able to plug into now through an API?
So, I would say, for instance, named entity extraction at the level of accuracy that we get with Haven on Demand, particularly, is something that even with our given that we have a vast database of entities, you would think it'd be very easy for us to do the same thing. It's a difficult problem to tackle, and HPE has helped us considerably.
To add to what Michael's saying, so a good example might be, so we're doing this across 120 million things. So that's the first piece of complexity.
Yeah.
The second one is, if you're trying to resolve Apple Inc., the company, and you just read Apple versus the fruit versus New York City, which is often called the Big Apple, it's a really hard problem for a computer to solve. And so and doing that at scale again is not trivial. And we're doing this across, we're streaming thousands or hundreds of thousands of news articles every hour and analyzing that data and then making these categorizations of, I read this piece of information, it was about this entity, a company, and it was taking an action on this other entity, a person or a company, and it was related, so you start connecting the dots. It's not easy.
And those steps are critical in reasoning about the data. It's not something that we necessarily need to invent in-house. That frees us up to work on core algorithms to interpret the data instead of spending all the time trying to disambiguate Apple from the Big Apple, for instance. So it makes our day-to-day is dramatically different. The problems that we solve are dramatically different. We could spend 2 years working on named entity recognition and getting that very accurate, or we could plug into an API and work on algorithms, financial algorithms that do actually, that matter to the company.
Absolutely.
And you sell a subscription?
So because it's an institutional product, the data is made available via API. So it depends on kind of the application that the information is going into, and whether or not the information is going to a human eyeball or to another system or machine.
Okay.
So it's a subscription-based business, but it depends again on kind of the end.
Yes, that was my next question, is how is it consumed? And
Yes.
you're saying it's consumed differently by machines than it is by humans.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have this, for human consumption, we actually have a really nice AI, and he has a name, he's called Rob Otto, for Roboto, but his name is Rob. And
Mr. Roboto.
Yeah, and he is a fairly intelligent financial analyst. So you can ask him questions about markets, stocks, trade ideas, and he will try to answer you back in a human. So you can have a conversation with Rob, and what he's doing in the background, he's actually doing a lot of financial analysis and coming back to you with a response that a human being would expect versus a machine that would want, structured data or just analytical information.
And you built this?
Yes.
This is,
Yes.
you guys built, that's really your secret, a big part of your secret sauce as well.
Yeah.
And so it's, in a way, competing with Watson, yes? Is that?
Absolutely,
Well, yeah.
and not necessarily at the same time.
The secret sauce.
The absolutely is I can, ostensibly anyway, talk to Watson
Yeah,
and
yeah,
get a
yeah,
response.
exactly.
The not necessarily is Watson can't do what.
Yeah,
you-
Watson
you
is
do.
really good in healthcare and a couple
Yeah.
of other industries. I don't know if he's been trained up in financial services. And again, we are that's all we know. I mean, that's sort of our background.
Yeah. Right.
And in machine learning, one of the traps that a lot of people fall into is you think you can go get the best model or neural network and it'll give you the best answer. And what turns out to be the case is that having that kind of context, industry experience, intuition around what's important is really the secret sauce. So we've spent over 35 years in the business. We kind of know what financial people care about. And if you asked our machine a question and you asked another piece of amazing AI a similar question, you might be surprised because we tend to be smarter.
Well, if you think of sentiment, and you pose to a sentiment endpoint that is not trained in financial terminology, and you give it an article that someone has issued shares, a company has issued shares or bought them back, and what is it good or is it bad? And if you ask a generic one, it happy or neutral, or
they don't understand.
there's no context there. It has no idea what that means, and so that's something that we have to do in house, because a sentiment endpoint, for instance, is provided as just it's a generic sentiment thing. It's good perhaps if you're looking for tweets about Jennifer Aniston or something.
Yeah, right. So in that example, a very simplified example, but happy.
Yeah, it's not necessarily
versus dilutive. How dilutive?
Exactly.
Impact. Long term, near
Yes.
term.
Interest rates went up, and typical machine learning thing will tell you, oh, this is good.
It's up.
Why is the market going down?
Yeah, and you're like, no, it doesn't make sense. That's kind of, so having that specific kind of industry know-how is really important, and you have to instill it into the machine because it doesn't know these things.
Now, how do you price? Now, I know it's got to be really, really expensive because of the value, but what's your pricing model? Is it by machine, by user, by?
I think it's by analytical category is the best way to think about it. So in the unstructured data world, we have a product that basically monitors news for you, connects the dots, tells you what's important and what's going on and how that information is getting added to our knowledge graph. So that's kind of one category of data. Another one is we have predictive models. So you can actually say, given all these things that aren't conventionally part of an econometric model, say, like sentiment, news, political risk, what central bankers are saying, like how do you capture all of that into a model and then allow me to predict stock returns or the price of a specific class of securities in the future. So those predictive models, again, are like a different solution or a different product. So we price by that.
Okay. More on the company, like how long have you been around, funding?
So yeah, we are young. We've been around for about a year. We are self-funded right now, but we are in the process of actually going through our first round of outside money. So we're talking to people now who have shown a lot of interest.
New York
in what we're doing.
VCs mostly?
Yeah, mostly New York, because I think they understand
right.
what we're doing and what we're all about. And I think there is a pretty robust community around the fintech, of investors around the fintech space in New York.
How many people are you today?
We're 4 of us today.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Wow, that's fantastic. And you've got you're live in the marketplace. You've got real
Yeah,
customers.
we have and we have customers that are testing and using our products right now.
So you guys self-funded, but you're generating maybe not positive cash flow, but cash, right?
Yeah, a little, yeah. And it's, again, like with what we're doing and what we found, and even the reason why we invented Rob was because it's still a new field for many people, and financial services tend to be conservative. So the sales cycle to a large enterprise is obviously challenging, and you have to kind of explain what you do to many layers of decision makers within an organization. So if we can, rather than explain, show value is sort of the tack that we've taken. So we're very happy to partner with people and kind of prove out that what we're doing makes sense for them
I would imagine
before we try to commercialize product.
with all the experience that you have, though, on some of the companies that you worked with, worked for, you would have a foot in the door at companies.
Yeah, it
that
helps.
would be
It does help.
It does.
customers. I wonder about starting a company these days, and you're 4 people and you're building a company, and it seems like 5 years ago that would have been almost unthinkable. Are there any infrastructure investments involved in what you do, or is everything in the cloud?
I mean, Michael can speak to this, actually.
Well, having the cloud, having cloud providers is really a game changer. But we still would, and it may surprise some people, we still use bare metal for 30% of the infrastructure.
And why is that?
Why? Performance, raw performance. There are only so many ways to get a terabyte of RAM, and it's
Right.
Yeah.
All the caching in the world.
GPUs or or Power 8s or things. There are different types of architectures that you just can't get virtualized at the moment, and so you have to kind of rely on big machines. Big metal machines.
Is there something that you get out of using Vertigo that you couldn't get through any other source?
We're not
actually Vertigo
I'm
customers,
sorry.
but we are HPE Haven On-Demand customers.
Haven.
And so
Which is a sort of
right.
blend of,
Vertigo and Autonomy.
Yes.
Yes. And Hadoop.
and you're disruptive. You're disruptive. You're disrupting presumably
we're definitely
Bloomberg,
trying.
right? I mean,
I don't know. I think
I know you probably don't want to say that.
spec in there, yeah.
They're so
it's
huge and
yeah.
giant, but I mean, this is.
We're
I
definitely
wouldn't
trying to
say
change how
Bloomberg is
people go
the-
about doing their day-to-day jobs.
And how do
That's
they
kind
do
of
that,
our
right?
focus. So I
they
think
pick up the phone.
and they
sift
work in
through
spreadsheets, and they look at
documents and
they look at
spreadsheets,
like things one at a time. So we're trying to change a lot of that, where we can automate
I
what
think
you
for-
do on a day-to-day basis.
What we're trying to do here, it's very difficult to go deep at scale. So if you're trying to model a high-performing research analyst, even a high-performing research analyst cannot cover more than a few stocks, maybe a sector, maybe. And they're only able to revisit that once a quarter, maybe, or when Apple
News
gets
breaks,
a giant fine or something. We're able to do that at scale for everything all the time, 24 hours a day.
Right, they're living in 10Ks and 8Ks and docs and reading the notes, and it's just torture.
And
we burn
really-
through those and ingest them, rip
No,
out
no,
just
no,
what,
no.
yeah,
Bing.
right, exactly. Filter, and then we find just what we need to zoom in on, and then that piece of information is either acted on immediately or it's added to the graph for potential later inclusion, because it could be part of a very long trend of events where we need to go back and follow the breadcrumbs to an original event, and so that's added into the event graph.
Awesome. We got to go. Great story. Thank you so much for coming on, and best of luck to you guys
Appreciate it.
with the raise, and hopefully
yeah.
see you here next year with
For
a
sure.
continued story.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Keep it right there, everybody. Paul and I will be back. We're going to wrap up day one here at HPE's Big Data Conference. This is theCUBE. Right back.